right, we are back today with one of our Bryan ISD endorsed candidates, Julie Harlin. Julie, thank you for being with us today.
I am happy to join you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course, absolutely. So one of the things that I love about you is that you have such a passion for agriculture and ag-related activities. And I think not only is your son involved in FFA, but you yourself have a PhD in ag education. I'm curious, did you grow up on a farm, or where did your passion for ag come from? And, how did you pass that on to your son?
Yeah, I grew up a horse crazy girl, really from birth. I think there's some kids that are just born with that. I have two nieces that are that way too, despite their parents really not being interested in that. So, I grew up just really wanting to be around horses. And I grew up in a subdivision where I couldn't have a horse, but we could have sheep and rabbits and dogs and cats and birds. So I had a menagerie. I showed sheep for 2 years and earned enough money to buy my first horse. And at that point, my parents finally figured out that I was serious. I was absolutely relentless. So we moved out to the country in a neighboring town, a little town called Orange Grove, Texas, and had 10 acres so I could have horses. So we made that move when I was about 12. So since I was 12, I've had horses in my life pretty much most of the time. But just had a love for, grew up doing 4-H and later FFA, and showed all kinds of animals, sheep, steers. My brothers and sisters had pigs, and we had chickens and those kind of things. So, just really enjoy that life. When I came back to A&M to do PhD, I was unable, we lived in town, and I was without a horse for about 12 years. But got back into it in 2009. I purchased a horse again. We lived on acreage, so I really didn't have a lot of excuses other than it's really hard once you leave that to try to jump back in. But I've so enjoyed the last 10 years or so getting able to show my horses and ride my horses. My son, I really wasn't sure had this about him. He loved our pets. We have dogs and cats, but he showed sheep. Or not sheep, goats. I talked him into showing goats when he was 9. And he did that 2 years, but really didn't enjoy it. And so my conversation with him was, I've already done this. I don't need to do it more. So he's like, I don't want to do it anymore. But I did encourage him to enroll in an ag class at Bryan High School, which he had a friend that was taking ag, so that sort of helped him make that decision. But I'm telling you, within the first week, he fell in love with his ag teachers, with the content. So he has very different interests than I have. He does the agri-science fair, which works well as I'm a professor. I get to help him with, he does the social science projects. And has a real interest in people's decision-making related to how they feel about agriculture or not eating meat or plant-based meats. He's very passionate about those issues. And he's doing welding this semester. He's done floral design. He usually takes 2 ag classes every semester. So he's an officer in the FFA. I mean, he just really loves it. So I'm excited. I wasn't sure that we would have that connection, but I'm just thrilled that my son found a love for agriculture just like I did. In fact, I was a high school ag teacher, and right now that's a path that he's considering as well. So I don't know where he'll end up on that, but it's very exciting to see that.
Well, that's awesome. And we're neighbors, sort of. We live out in way north Bryan. It's not that far out, but yeah, we've got acreage as well. And so we're kind of starting in that path and have sheep and stuff like that. So it's a cool experience to be able to have animals on your property and then benefit from them. And We had a steak the other night that was from cattle that run on our land as well. So it's kind of a cool connection.
Yes, and it's fun for the kids, I think, to develop that sense of responsibility and taking care of things and thinking about something other than themselves. I mean, my son has been brought up that the animals always get fed first. So, you know, I think that has developed his sense of responsibility toward other things in life too.
And that's great. And especially, I mean, all of the different areas that CTEC covers as well. That's really great for our students to be able to participate in that. So, you know, we interviewed you before, and you also filled out a questionnaire for our Criminal Affairs Committee. And in the questionnaire, you said that the state needs to take some more of the burden off of local taxpayers for school finance. And we know every legislative session, every 2 years, school finance is probably the number one, if not number two topic every single session forever. Given the need for property tax relief for citizens of Bryan, do you think that shifting more of the funding back to the state will offer this kind of relief? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at historical percentages, you know, the state has dumped their burden on communities. I mean, the percentages demonstrate that. At the same time, our rainy day fund has grown. So, you know, from my perspective, the state as a whole has shirked their responsibility in providing for citizens of the state of Texas. And I think that is a travesty, quite honestly. So it's a complex system. I don't have easy answers. I just know that we can do better and we need to seek to do better. Our future generations depend on this. It's really, you know, I think about of all the things that the state spends money on, and a lot of it, you know, I've talked to some of our state legislators about this. I recognize that the discretionary spending in our state budget is not super significant. You know, there's a lot of funds that are earmarked for nutrition programs and aid for families that need it, and, you know, those kinds of things. But aside from that, for the piece that is discretionary, I feel like it needs an overhaul, and that the state needs to step up to the plate to ensure equity across the state. I mean, there are some communities that really don't have much tax base. I get that things are very difficult in those places. Some of our smaller rural districts really struggle with how to fund public schools. I don't want to say we're lucky here, but we are luckier than most in that we do have a robust tax base here in Bryan College Station. But it's still the state's responsibility to provide this for our kids. So, and you know, I think about the fiscal responsibility of school districts and how we spend money. You know, the majority of our money is spent on salaries. We don't have much discretionary either, which, you know, from a school funding model, I get feedback sometimes from folks who don't understand why we need things like a bond. You know, why don't y'all just save your money? Okay, it doesn't work that way. There's no money to save for those kinds of large ticket expenditures when you're talking land and new buildings. $175 million bond sounds like a lot, but I think over 90,000 of that is going straight to building 2 buildings and purchasing land. So the other pieces, when you talk maintenance of roofs, and we have so many buildings across the district that are older and are in disrepair. You know, if I have to approve one more air handling thing at Bryan High, I mean, there's all kinds of things with that building that we're like, isn't it fixed yet? Well, it's old equipment. They don't even make parts for some of it, so we're having to replace pieces as we go. So investing in the community, in our future children, by building a new intermediate school and moving transportation to a new location. I know we think transportation can just make do, but they've been making do for a very long time with really awful facilities as our fleet has grown exponentially. You know, I saw a dump truck out there the other day dumping another load of gravel for them to park on. So, you know, it's time to do some things that are pretty major. So I hope voters will recognize that because we've been fiscally responsible as a district way before my time on the board, right? I've been on the board 4 years, so way before my time. We have a very high rating for that fiscal responsibility. Interest rates are extremely low right now. So when you combine all of that, it means that we're able to ask voters to approve that large bond package without any increase to the tax rate. So I think that is, for me, that's really a message that I'm excited to share. You know, I hope that provides some clarity for voters on what we're asking for and why we can't save for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it really sounds like you put a lot of thought into these issues, and you know what you're talking about, and your background says you've got a passion for education. I mean, you've spent your whole life essentially doing this, and you know, why should our members and Brian, realtor members, support you? Because it does sound like you really have a passion for what you're talking about, and you know what you're talking about too. But
yeah, well, you know, sort of my message on this, why support me? Supporting me means that you are supporting the good things that Brian has been doing and that you believe that we're moving in the right direction. So I'm not running on a platform of change. I'm running on this platform of consistency and continuity. And as I look at research on what effective school districts have, one of the things where student learning is most improved in districts or is maintained in districts, one of the key indicators is a stable board environment. So, you know, when people say, why are you running? You know, this is a volunteer position. It does take lots of time and energy to be up to speed on all of these issues. The reason I run is because this is a way that I can serve our community and ensure that our students have the best possible futures ahead of them. So I do it for that reason. The kind of education my child has had, I want for every kid. And I sincerely believe that we are on a terrific path in Brian. And I don't want to lead anyone to believe that I'm somehow individually responsible for these things. Quite honestly, if it weren't for the work of Dr. Whitbeck as our district leader, we wouldn't be in the position we are today. So Dr. Whitbeck and the team that she has put together is phenomenal. They come with just this sense of compassion and grace and transparency that is really, it's propelled our district in ways just in a very short period of time that were unanticipated, quite honestly. So as we did the baby bond about a year ago, we had a group, a bond steering committee that determined what we were going to ask voters to approve. So all of that came from the community. And then after the bond was approved, there was a bond oversight committee and I'm on that one, but that group ensures that we're spending the dollars in the way that we told taxpayers we were going to. And if there's changes, you know, needs sometimes change after those bonds are approved, we're the group that makes the recommendations on how to use those funds or what we want to do with those funds. So that process, I want voters to understand that this isn't a Julie Harlin thing. This is me being part of the district and just being really on board with the direction things are headed.
Awesome. Well, Julie, it was an honor for us to support your candidacy, and thank you so much for spending some time with us this morning.
Well, I so appreciate the support and am just thankful to be in this community in this time. I'm excited for our future.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Julie. Have a good
Thank
day.
you. Y'all have a great day.
Julie.